Hey there everybody, how's it going? My name is Nova Aurora, bringing you another Battlefield 4 gameplay commentary today. Playing a round of Conquest Large here on Gielan Peaks with the 870 MCS pump action shotgun as my primary. Now, the 870 is definitely my favorite pump action shotgun and one of my favorite weapons in the game. In fact, I believe it is the weapon that I have the most kills with in the entire game. And what better reason to use it now than the fact that it actually received a buff in the most recent patch. It and all other pump action shotguns received a nice accuracy buff as my teammates gracefully smashed into that flagpole there. And that's going to lead me into the topic of this video, which is not teammates smashing into flagpoles, but rather the effects of the most recent patch that dropped last week. There were quite a few significant changes implemented with this patch, and I'm going to preface this by saying for the most part, I am very happy with it, especially with the intended effects of the patch. Needless to say, this is a Battlefield game, so there were some unintended effects of the patch. But ignoring those for the meantime, and just considering what was intended to be patched, I'm pretty happy with it. So, for starters, like I said, pump-action shotguns got an accuracy buff. Basically, their aim-down sight spread was reduced by about half, I believe. So, that makes them a lot more reliable when engaging enemies beyond the sort of point-blank range that shotguns are already most reliable in. Now, some people might think that this makes them quite overpowered because, well, this just makes it even easier to one-shot people. But in my experience, and maybe I am a little bit biased because, as I've said before, I'm a pretty heavy shotgun user. I've always been a fan of the shotgun playstyle. I think that it's still perfectly fair. And my reasoning for this is before it felt too unreliable when aiming down sights of a shotgun as to whether you'd actually reliably damage an opponent's not. I'd have times where I could aim down sights and hit somebody in the middle of the reticle about 20 meters away and do almost no damage to them. They'd kill me and they'd be at 86 health or something like that. And then there were other times when they were even further away and I would hit them the same way and it would instantly drop them because of the randomness of the spread of the pellets. So giving them that accuracy buff I don't think has made them overpowered. I think it has just made them more reliable and less frustrating to use. Let's put it like this. Instead of half the time you do absolutely nothing to an opponent and the other half of the time you'll drop them in maybe even one shot, or at least a few shots. Now it reliably takes a few well-aimed shots at medium range to reliably drop an opponent. It's still very fair if an opponent has a fully automatic weapon or a DMR, for example, at medium range. They're still going to most likely drop you before you can drop them if they have good accuracy. You're going to have to do a lot of work to actually be able to win gunfights like that. So I mentioned DMRs there. That brings me into the next major weapon change, which was DMRs got a huge buff across the board in this last patch, which I think was sorely needed. They got damage buffs, accuracy buffs, recoil buffs, all kinds of things on an individual DMR basis. Each one is slightly different. And honestly, I think this is one of the most needed changes in this patch, but also one of the things that in practice doesn't seem to have made that much difference. Some people are crying foul that DMRs are now incredibly overpowered and they're the only things worth using. I disagree. I find that the more people cry about DMRs, well, the worse of a player they tend to be. Because quite honestly, you're still going to get out DPS'd by almost any other gun in the game at close and medium ranges, and they aren't still very accurate. They still have large suppression detriments when you're getting fired at. They often take a large penalty to their recoil. They are slow firing. Several of them still require you to get a three-shot hit to the body to kill. And I just don't find them very effective, especially for a runner and gunner like me, where I'm always going to try to get up in enemies' faces and take objectives. It's not very effective. So while I think this has at least made them usable and a much more universally viable option that I'll at least consider. I have played around with them significantly since the patch, and I still don't like them as much as a shotgun for close range or a different fully automatic weapon for virtually any other range. But if you were a fan of the DMRs before, then you'll definitely be a fan of them now. And if you weren't a fan, but you were sort of on the edge, then maybe you'll like them now, but maybe not. I don't think that there's any significant problems with them. I think that maybe they might need even a tiny bit more of a buff, but they suit a different play style than mine. And I think really that's what it comes down to. They're balanced for a different type of play style. That play style is not mine, and overall they're exactly where they should be in comparison to the other weapons in this game. So, some other changes that were made that don't have to deal with a specific item. The black screen on spawning has been significantly reduced, which is a huge improvement. I absolutely love this change. No longer am I getting instantly killed before I can even see where I'm moving because of the black screen. Oh, it's so wonderful. It's just so wonderful. I'm so happy they were able to make that change. Really nothing more to say about that. It's just universally great. The active radar missiles for the anti-air have been reduced from 6 in an entire cache to 4 to reduce spamming of those. And I believe the rate of fire of the 20mm cannon, or is it 25mm, whatever the smaller caliber cannon on the anti-air is, the range on that, sorry, not the rate of fire, the range on that has been reduced slightly by decreasing the rate at which the projectiles travel. So that is a welcome change. There's less AA camping in the deployments now than there was before. There's still a little bit of it, but it is a lot more manageable. Let's see. You'll notice, actually, if you haven't already, that the chat now is much more logically color-coded than it was before, if you haven't actually played Battlefield since this patch was implemented, and in which case I'm not really sure what you're doing on this channel, but if you haven't, you'll notice the color changes there, and it's not a very big change, but it is a welcome change. It's a lot easier to navigate the chat now. It's not just a confusing jumble of words that are all the same color, so I think that's welcome. I hadn't really considered that as a change that needed to be made, but I'm happy that it's there. In fact, I just remembered the other weapon change, which isn't very significant, but it is there, is that the Magnum and the Rex no longer have such an absurd delay between when you pull the trigger and when the gun actually fires. I understand this was implemented to replicate how the guns actually perform in real life, but honestly it was just getting in the way of having fun with them and making them viable sidearms. So the fact that that's changed now, I think is a nice improvement to the game. I haven't really used them extensively, but I have picked them up a little bit, and I can say that they're definitely more comfortable to use. And realism be damned, this is a game we play it for fun. We don't play it to replicate actual gunplay. Go to a firing range if you want that. I think that about wraps it up for the major changes that the patch implemented. I'm sure there were some smaller ones that I've forgotten or glossed over, but I do want to take a little bit of time to talk about some of the negative things that the patch did, because as a player of the game, you should be made aware of these, and also talk a little bit about what the future of the game should be in terms of patching. So, the most major downside of this last patch that I have seen, and that many people seem to be able to attest to, is there is now a widespread bug whereupon spawning in a tank's gunner seat, your game will just crash. It is as simple as that. And this is one of the most random, out-of-the-blue, absurd things I've ever heard in my life. Why that would, in any conceivable universe, be implemented as a bug, I have no idea, but it's there. So use caution when spawning in a tank's gunner seat or jumping in it, because I have crashed myself, my friends have crashed when getting in gunner seats, and it is ridiculous. Then, even if you can get into a gunner seat, on some maps, Siege of Shanghai and Zavad 311, I know this happens on. I cannot exactly remember if it happens specifically on any other maps, but I know it happens on those two, where you actually don't even have a reticle in your gunner turret, and you can't fire anything. You're basically just a sitting duck. Again, no idea why that would happen, but it's pretty ridiculous. It's really annoying. It's not completely game-breaking, but they really ought to fix this as soon as possible. There doesn't seem to be a reason for it. It seems to just be lazy and careless programming on DICE's part once again, and I really hope that they get to fixing that as soon as possible. I don't think there are any other major complaints I have about the patch. Since the patch, it seems to not be reliably squatting up friends with other friends. Before, it would automatically create a private squad of just friends if Origin friends joined on each other, and it doesn't seem to do that anymore. So I'm not sure if this was some sort of intentional change, or whether this is a bug implemented by the latest patch, or what, but something's definitely different, and I'm not really sure why that is, but it is inconvenient, and I wish that things would go back to the way they were pre-patch in that regard. So anyway, now that we've covered more or less what the last patch has done, I want to talk a little bit about where I want the game to go from here. In my previous commentary, I had said that this game has a ton of potential, and in my opinion, the most potential out of all of the modern Battlefield games to be an incredible multiplayer experience, if only they can get the technical things fixed and really iron out a bunch of the little kinks. Now, I think that they've done a pretty good job of that in this last patch. Things do seem stabler. The game definitely overall feels smoother and more enjoyable with the implementation, I'm using that word a lot today, geez, of things like the multicolored text and the decreased black screen upon spawning. Again, both welcome changes that just improve quality of life when playing. But obviously the game still has a fair ways to go. And it's nice to see that they are patching it relatively frequently and not just waiting until the next expansions. But we do have another expansion in Second Assault coming up, and we can expect another patch to come with it. So what would we like to see to make the game even better and really try and achieve that level of greatness that I think it can have? Well, for one, I think that the anti-airs and the attack boats definitely still need a little bit of balancing. And a couple weeks ago, actually, DICE reached out to the community and polled them about whether they should make changes to those things for a future patch. And a lot of people said yes, and I definitely agree with this. The anti-air still, I believe, can control way too much of the battlefield at once. It can sit in a relatively safe spot, like an early flag or a deployment, and reach more than halfway across the map to easily shut down half the sky. And I think that that is quite obnoxious, especially when paired with the active radar missiles, which now have been slightly nerfed because of the smaller cache size on anti-airs, but still give you almost no warning and no chance to react, and still disable you instantly upon hitting you. So I really hope that that's something that's a little bit better balanced out in a future patch. That and all anti-air missiles, DICE said that they are looking to implement that change where anti-air missiles of all kinds don't impact the helicopter or the jet as much to send it flying on its side and just careening uncontrollably into the ground. So that'll be really, really nice to see if they can do that. And then they want to balance out the attack boat a little bit and make it just a little bit harder for the driver of the boat to be effective against virtually all kinds of enemy targets. The explosive radius might be toned down a little bit, the direct damage of the cannons might be toned down a little bit, and in fact the burst cannon of the boats might be getting a little bit of a buff, which I think is again a welcome change, because right now it's sort of more of a gimmick and a novelty than anything else. It's not really an effective weapon that many people are going to want to go out and use. Obviously, some more technical problems like the tank bug implemented in this last patch, those certainly need to be fixed. There are still a few crashing problems that I've been running into. They are fewer and further between with every patch, but they do still exist. And if DICE wants the smoothest playing experience possible, then they will do well to fix those. I think that weapon balance is in a pretty good spot now. The DMR and the shotgun changes helped a lot. There has been some complaining about the Ace series of weapons being rather overpowered, specifically the Ace 52 carbine, but personally, I don't have a problem with that gun. I don't have a real problem with any of the Ace guns or any of the guns in particular. I don't have a particular weapon that I think is super unfair or that I've been getting killed by a lot. I think that DICE, for the first time, has really done a stellar job of giving each weapon its place and balancing them out to suit different play styles and to give everybody multiple options for multiple scenarios, and just not making anything extremely unfair. And props to them for not making some ridiculous weapon glitch with any of these patches. Like we had the M26 and the USAS bugs in Battlefield 3. There haven't been any of those, and that is just so great to see. So we're getting to the end of the video here, and I think that does about wrap it up for what I'd like to say. On the whole, again, I'm quite pleased with this last patch. There are one or two things that just seem nonsensical as to why they would be there now, but they are, and hopefully they'll be fixed. I think there's still some work to be done, and I think that the game still has a little ways to go before it can really truly be called a great game, but it's well on its way. I'm having more fun playing, and I still stand by what I said before, that this game has a lot of potential if DICE continues to be dedicated to it. So that's it for me, guys. Hope you enjoyed the footage. If you really enjoyed it, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I will see you next time.